All right, so first off, obviously, I'm not Kyle Kulinski. My name is Mac. I go by Good Politic Guy, YouTube, Twitter, and all of that stuff. And I'm going to be sort of filling in a little bit for Kyle as he's off enjoying his honeymoon with crystal balls. So, with that being said, I got some breaking news here for you guys because Donald Trump, as Kyle would say, our big wet boy, has officially lost his case against E. Jean Carroll. So, here from CNBC, they're going to give us a little bit of details here. They say, jury says that Trump must pay E. Jean Carroll $5 million for sexual abuse and defamation. Okay, so what are they talking about here? They say a New York federal jury found former President Donald Trump liable on Tuesday for sexually abusing and forcibly touching the writer E. Jean Carroll at a department store in the 1990s. And part of the reason why they were able to even move forward with this case, and by the way, it's not a criminal case, it is a civil case. So it's not like this is going to be a situation where Trump gets put in handcuffs or locked behind bars or anything like that. But clearly, he's probably going to have to pay out millions of dollars as part of this settlement. But the reason why they were able to even prosecute this as a civil case was, going back to the 1990s, is because recently New York basically changed some of their laws surrounding this to allow for a window of opening for people to pursue these kinds of civil litigations and sort of extending the window where people are allowed to move forward with this, even though it would typically be outside of the statute of limitations. But they say he also defamed her last fall when he denied her claim. Okay, so they got the jury of 6 men and 3 women awarded Carroll $5 million in compensatory and punitive damages. The verdict in the civil trial came after less than 3 hours of deliberations in the U.S. District Court in Lower Manhattan. Less than 3 hours. Okay, I don't know what the average is in a trial like this or something, but it seems like if you're dealing with something as sensitive as like sexual assault or rape, if there was any controversy about it in the minds of the jurors, it seems like it probably would have taken them more than 3 hours, right? I mean, maybe I'm off base about that, but 3 hours, and it seems like they came to this conclusion pretty firmly. They say that the jury did not, on the other hand, find Trump liable for rape, as Carroll had also alleged. Okay, so they got Trump's response here, but we're going to save that and get to that here in a second. But they say that Carroll's lawyer, Roberta Kaplan, said, "We are very happy," as she left the courthouse with her client, who did not speak to reporters. So clearly, they think that they came out the other side, even though they didn't get a rape decision on this specific trial, that they did come out the other side with a W in this situation. So they say that Carroll, who's age 79, claimed in her lawsuit that Trump raped her in a dressing room of the Bergdorf Goodman store back in the mid-1990s. Trump cannot be prosecuted for the alleged rape because, again, the statute of limitations for such a crime has long passed. But Carroll sued him with a civil claim of battery under a New York state law enacted in late 2022 that opened a 1-year window for lawsuits alleging sexual assaults that would otherwise be barred by the statute of limitations. They say that Carroll also claimed that Trump defamed her last fall when he said that she had made up her account of being raped. And they say Trump, age 76, called the allegations a complete con job and said that she was not his type. Okay, not his type. Kind of a weird defense, right? I mean, this is something he's been saying over and over and over again, and I think he's used this in multiple different situations. But if you sexually assaulted somebody and or if you didn't sexually assault somebody and those allegations came out, I don't think that your defense, if you actually didn't do it, would be "you're not my type," right? You would probably just come out and say, "I didn't do that," right? Or "I don't know who this, I don't know who this person is," or "I didn't, have any affiliation with them," or I completely deny all of these claims. He came out and he said, "She's not my type." Really? I mean, kind of a weird response, right? Kind of implying like, oh, if somebody was my type, then maybe I would have sexually assaulted them, right? I mean, just a bizarre defense there. And then on top of that, we also had this aspect that popped up during this trial. So they say, despite that claim, Trump mistook Carroll for his second wife, Marla Maples, in a photo shown to him and Carroll in the 1980s. Okay, so she's not your type, which I guess therefore in Trump's mind means that he couldn't have possibly sexually assaulted her. But when you looked at an old photograph of her, you mistook her for one of your ex-wives. Okay, so like, what's the explanation for that? Is your ex-wife also not your type? Or is E. Jean Carroll potentially she was your type because you literally thought that she looked like your ex-wife? Or is this just Trump getting up there in age and sort of pulling his own version of a Joe Biden and sort of losing it cognitively and he can't tell the difference? I mean, what kind of a response is that? I mean, again, just absolutely bizarre defenses from Trump. But they continue down here, just a little bit more information here. Another bizarre statement that came out during this trial. So they said during one of these video testimonies that we saw that he also said, and this is referring to the Access Hollywood tapes that leaked, where he did the famous you can grab them by the pussy thing, right? So they said he also said that it has been historically true with stars that they can get away with that, right? Grabbing women without their permission. And he says this: if you look over the last million years, I guess that's been largely true. Trump testified in his deposition. Not always, but largely true. Unfortunately or fortunately. I'm sorry. What? Huh? What? Unfortunately or fortunately? I mean, first of all, last million years. Human civilization, I mean, our organized societies haven't even been around for a million years. But putting that aside here, okay, it's true. It's largely true. It's not always true. Unfortunately or fortunately. So again, he's basically implying maybe it's in some circumstances fortunate that in our society historically that men have been able to just grope women without their permission. I mean, that's what we're talking about here. Okay, so would it surprise anybody that Trump would have sexually assaulted E. Jean Carroll or any number of the other women who have alleged that Trump has sexually assaulted them? I mean, no, it shouldn't surprise absolutely anybody. I mean, he's basically coming out and sort of bragging about it in a way, right? Or at least giving bizarre defenses that aren't even really defenses. Okay, so we have all of the basic details there. Now we get to Trump's response to this situation. So here is pointed out by Shelby Talcott, a response on Truth Social. They say, I have absolutely no idea who this woman is. Really? You don't even know who E. Jean Carroll? I mean, that part of it is just kind of like laughable at face value, right? But he says this verdict is a disgrace, a continuation of the greatest witch hunt of all time. Okay, so I'm guessing that he's including this trial as a part of this collection of trials that Trump has been facing, whether it's the one down in Georgia, whether it's the one with his tax fraud allegations. I mean, so many different prosecutions and investigations, the one about the classified documents as well. I'm going to get to a list of some of those here in a second, but it seems like these are all piling up. And in Trump's mind, he wants everybody to believe that this is just one giant witch hunt. I mean, dude, you are one of the most obvious con men and frauds and liars in the history of the country, which is saying a lot because almost every US president has been a liar and a fraud and a con man to at least one degree in one way or another, right? But Donald Trump somehow manages to like top them all, and he expects people, okay, this is a guy who like back during the 80s or 90s or whatever was like working with probably the mob in New York City. Okay, and he expects us to believe that he's perfectly innocent. None of these allegations, none of these trials, none of these investigations that he has been facing have any validity to them whatsoever. Okay, perfectly innocent guy, never done anything wrong. He's basically Jesus Christ reincarnate. Okay, that's how Trump wants to portray the situation. It seems like probably a decent amount of Republicans are actually sort of buying into that narrative, right? And we're going to get to some of that recent polling data here in a second. But we had one more aspect of this, which I thought was interesting, as pointed out here by Richard Hanania, just to give you an aspect of like what, the trial was looking like. Who were the jurors? Did they have political biases against Trump? Is this just like the woke mob trying to go after Trump and take him down because he's so patriotic and great for the country or something like that? Well, here's just one of the jurors. They say, a 31-year-old security guard from the Bronx also said that he generally avoided the news, but told the judge that he got his information mainly from podcasts, especially one hosted by the right-wing provocateur Tim Pool. From Tim Pool. Okay, now listen, Tim Pool will probably read this and say, no, I'm not a right-wing, YouTuber, right? I'm a centrist, I'm an enlightened centrist or something like that. Go look at the breadth of his coverage on any given topic. This is the same guy who was basically saying Trump was going to win in like a 49 or 50 state landslide back in 2020. Okay, so that's who Tim Pool is. You could fairly say that he's right wing. This is where this guy gets his news from. Okay, this was one of the members of the jurors, apparently, and they managed to convince him that, this was a case where Trump was at least civilly guilty in this circumstance. Okay, so I mean, again, it's not as if this was just some pool of like, super mega liberals or, radical socialists or something like that, just out to get Trump or something like that. If you're getting most of your news from Tim Pool, you could say if that person's convinced, Trump's probably guilty, right? So now I want to get to this because the other aspect of this is not just the details of the case or who the jurors were or any of that kind of stuff. Another aspect of this is like, well, how is this going to play out in the future, right? Is this going to hurt Trump? Is it going to help Trump in the primary, in the general election? Well, let's just read a little bit into this. So there's this interesting piece that was put out by Axios, which is basically giving us sort of a more recent insight into sort of the validity of the Teflon Don claims, because we've seen some hits, some misses, some things tend to stick to him, some things don't. He can just kind of brush them off, especially during his presidency. It seemed like nothing could possibly take him down. But now we have all of these different court cases that are stacking up. Whether or not one of them is going to result in him getting put behind bars or anything like that, definitely still up in the air. I would have my doubts on that aspect of it. But whether or not this is going to actually help him for 2024, it seems like, at least within the Republican primary, it probably is. So first, they give us just a little bit of a rundown in terms of some of his legal troubles that he is facing right now. So they say former President Trump, in the past few months, has been indicted on 34 felony counts. He has learned that someone who worked for him at Mar-a-Lago is cooperating with federal prosecutors on whether he hid the classified documents. He faced a civil trial, which we just read about, over a rape accusation from 1996. He defended his Access Hollywood contention that celebrities like himself can grab women by their genitals, saying, again, historically that's true with stars. He has faced rising competition from credible 2024 challengers, including Ron DeSantis, Nikki Haley, and Tim Scott of South Carolina. Okay, I'd like to pause on that just for 1 second, because would Axios also be putting out articles saying that Marianne Williamson, who's been polling at upwards of like 10%, or even RFK Jr., who I'm not even really a big fan of, polling upwards of like almost 20%, would they say that they're also credible and serious challengers against Biden? No, probably not. I mean, maybe they did, but every other mainstream outlet that I've seen, they're taking these people like Tim Scott and Nikki Haley, who are probably collectively polling at about like 18 people total that are supporting their campaigns, and they're saying those are credible challengers, but Marianne Williamson's not a credible. Okay, so we'll move on from that aspect of it, but they say he's at least dealing with some challenges. I'd say the only one that's even hypothetically plausible as a challenger would be Ron DeSantis, but even he has just been getting slapped across the stage back and forth over the last couple of months. But they continue saying that he has seen a growing likelihood that he'll be indicted again, this time for trying to corrupt the 2020 election results. Again, those Georgia case that we've been tracking over the last couple of months. They say he has faced rising competition. Okay, I don't know why they repeated this again. I guess they're just really big on Nikki Haley and Tim Scott. Apparently, had to throw it in there twice. But on the counter end of that, right, so you have all of these different things that are sort of adding up. This isn't even really a complete list of everything, but they also say at the same time that Trump has also moved up in the Republican primary and general election polls, won a flurry of 2024 endorsements from House Republicans, including several from Florida, beating DeSantis at a high-stakes inside game. They say he's raised a formidable $34 million for his 2024 campaign, with a surge of donations after his indictment. Okay, so his indictment helped him raise more money, right? They say he's run former Secretary of State Mike Pompeo, who looked set for a 2024 run out of the race, and revved up his voters with continued claims that the deep state is targeting him, which doubles as an appeal to all voters who view elites skeptically. Okay, so again, I think that honestly, this probably won't make that much of a difference in the Republican primary, at least, right? Is this going to be enough for Ron DeSantis to make some sort of miraculous comeback against Donald Trump? Probably not. I mean, these are, the same base of supporters who still voted for him after the Access Hollywood tapes, right? After every single thing that Trump has been facing, they're still with him overwhelmingly. Okay, so probably won't affect him in the primary election in the Republican Party, but it also could have somewhat of an impact with independents or, centrists or something like that in the general election, when you have a guy who's been found guilty and had to pay a $5 million settlement, for sexually assaulting somebody. I mean, certainly I think that would have some sort of an impact on at least some people. Okay, so there's your update right now. Again, this is sort of breaking news, but I'll look forward to seeing you guys in the immediate future over the next couple of days, Thursday, Friday, Saturday. I'll have some content for you guys on Kyle's channel, and there you have it. Trump officially going to pay out a settlement for sexually assaulting E. Jean Carroll.
Hey y'all, do me a favor and like and subscribe. It helps out big time in the algorithm. Click the bell as well for notifications when videos drop, and watch that video on screen right now. You know you want to.